Hi, my name is Stephen Hutchings, and in this video I will outline how the Marich Pole sculpture was constructed. Here is what the finished sculpture looks like after it was installed in Florenceville, Bristol, New Brunswick. To start, of course, one has to design the artwork. So first off, I identified the things about the Marich house and the Finley family that I wanted to include in the sculpture. Then I created the shapes that would act as symbols for each item and turned the drawings of the shapes into vector-based computer graphics. I had the shapes cut out of aluminum and built a maquette or small-scale model, gluing the aluminum shapes onto a pole. That enabled me to visualize the sculpture in 3 dimensions. The full-size sculpture would have to be built out of steel, and I wanted it to be 30 feet tall. So in order to ensure that the idea would work on this large scale, I took the maquette to an engineer, in my case, Brent Pearson of Glassfield, New Brunswick, who identified the thickness of the steel plate needed for the shapes and the diameter that the steel pole had to be in order to withstand the wind and stay upright. To start the construction process, I went to Craig's Manufacturing in Heartland, who had machinery that could cut the pieces out of the thick steel plate. The cutting machine follows the computer outline of each shape and uses powerful water jets to cut through the steel. The process was quite fast, and all the shapes were cut out and loaded on a skid within a few hours. The shapes were then transported to Stephen Graham Welding in nearby Lakeville. Since the sculpture was 30 feet high, the pole needed to be horizontal in order to easily attach the shapes. So one end of the pole was attached to a rotational device, sort of like a spit on a barbecue, and the other was held up with a forklift. Each steel shape was lifted up with a hoist and maneuvered into position where it was welded to the pole. The maquette was used as a guide to position the steel pieces correctly. Stephen's daughter, Casey, did the welding for the entire piece, well, except for a tiny bit at the end, which she let me do. With the welding complete, the steel sculpture was loaded onto a trailer and moved to BWS Manufacturing's large plant in Centerville, which had a booth large enough to spray paint the sculpture. For the color, I had chosen 2 different shades of blue, so after spraying on the first coat of the darker blue, masking tape was applied for where the second blue was to go. Meanwhile, at the site in Florenceville, Bristol, where the sculpture was to stand, Cook's Construction from Woodstock laid the foundation for the sculpture and built the formwork for the sloped base. Concrete was poured and allowed to harden for a few days. On installation day, the finished painted sculpture was trucked from the paint shop to the site at Riverside Park in Bristol, where 2 cranes were waiting. One crane lifted the very top of the sculpture, while the other steadied the bottom. It was hoisted up, lifted over to the base, placed in position, and then bolted down to the concrete plinth. The Marich Pole sculpture was now complete, and the whole gang of people who worked on the project came together to see the finished result. As you've seen, the creation of a large sculpture, such as the Marich Pole, requires many people with many different talents and skills, and very special equipment. The main role of the artist in all of this is to come up with a concept, the idea for the piece, to provide drawings and models to act as guides, and to help manage the entire fabrication process to ensure their vision for the sculpture has been correctly realized. The rest is up for the public to enjoy.